You gotta do it. Hey, I'm just eating some flesh, whatever. All right, I want to get to some updates on the national discussion on the Second Amendment and what is going on with the ridiculous representation of Parkland, Florida via David Hogg, Cameron Kasky, and Emma Gonzalez. But first, I would like to play a video from a man who stood in front of his representatives to lay down some hard truths on gun control in his neck of the woods. So let's take a look at that real quick.
I didn't have time to
You have to give us your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Mark Robinson. I live at 4015. That's right here in Greensboro. Lived in Greensboro all my life. I didn't have time to write a fancy speech. I didn't have time to, I didn't have the resource of an English teacher to sit down and write a speech with at school today and be, brought over here or practice or anything. What I really came down here for is this. I've heard a whole lot of people in here talking tonight about this group and that group and domestic violence and blacks, these minorities and that minority. What I want to know is, when are you all going to start standing up for the majority? And here's who the majority is. I'm the majority. I'm a law-abiding citizen who's never shot anybody, never committed a serious crime, never committed a felony. I've never done anything like that. But it seems like every time we have one of these shootings, nobody wants to put the blame where it goes, which is at the shooter's feet. You want to put it at my feet. You want to turn around and restrict my right, constitutional right that's spelled out in black and white. You want to restrict my right to buy a firearm and protect myself from some of the very people you're talking about in here tonight. It's ridiculous. I don't think Rod Serling could come up with a better script. It does not make any sense. The law-abiding citizens of this community and many communities around this country, we're the first ones taxed and the last ones considered and the first ones punished when things like this happens, because our rights are the ones that are being taken away. That's the reason why I came down here today. Gun show or no gun show, NRA or no NRA. I'm here to stand up for the law-abiding citizens of this community, because I'm going to tell you that what's going to happen. You can take the guns away from us all you want to. You all write a law, I follow the law, I'll bring my guns down here, I'll turn them in. But here's what's going to happen. The Crips and the Bloods on the other side of town, they're not going to turn their guns in. They're going to hold on to them. And what's going to happen when you have to send the police down there to go take them? The police can barely enforce the law as it is. As what I see, we demonize the police, criminalize and vilify the police, and we make the criminals into victims. And we're talking about restricting guns? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that when the police department's already hamstrung? You're not going to be able to go down here and take these guns from these criminals. So the criminals are going to hold on to their guns. They're still going to have them. They're still going to break in my house and they're still going to shoot me with them. And guess who's going to be the one that suffers? It's going to be me. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, it is not going to happen without a fight. And when I say fight, I don't mean shots fired. I don't mean fist thrown. I mean, I'm going to come down here to this city council and raise hell just like these loonies from the left do until you listen to the majority of the people in this city. And I am the majority. The majority of the people in this city are law-abiding, and they follow the law, and they want their constitutional right to be able to bear arms. They want to be able to go to the gun show and buy a hunting rifle or a sport rifle. There are no military-grade weapons sold at the gun show. An AR-15 is not a military-grade weapon. Anybody that would go into combat with an AR-15 is a fool. It's a semi-automatic .22 rifle. You'd be killed in 15 minutes in combat with that thing. So we need to dispel all these myths, and we need to drop all this division that we got going on here. Because the bottom line is, when that Second Amendment was written, whether the framers liked it or not, they wrote it for everybody. And I am everybody. And the law-abiding citizens of this city are everybody. And we want our rights, and we want to keep our rights. And by God, we're going to keep them, come hell or high water.
Boom! I love this guy. I absolutely love this guy. I salute you, sir. So let's talk about the premise of his argument here, which I think is the most important part, different from the the other arguments that are out there in regards to gun control and everything. He is talking, his main underlying issue is the majority, or the message is the majority, right? The majority of people, of gun owners, are responsible, law-abiding citizens. It's the criminals that are misusing things. Now, we don't overreact when a criminal uses a rented Home Depot truck to plow through a crowd and call for a ban on vehicles. We're going to get to a story later in London and talk about how that weapon isn't being called for a ban on it. But the interesting thing about the majority is this. There are over 320 million guns in the United States alone, okay? Less than 1% of those guns are used in violent crimes. And the majority of that 1% is then later broken down into the fact that the majority of those are suicides. This goes back and feeds into our last topic that we talked about earlier tonight of bullying. If the majority of people commit suicide, they're dealing with a great amount of depression. We have a mess in our society. People are depressed. People are committing suicide at high rates. We have a lot of our soldiers that are coming back. I think the number is 22 soldiers a day are committing suicide. There's a big problem that we have going on. I think that there's a hole in our souls that is missing, that we're seeking to fill with different things. And when we seek out some of those things, it leads to depression. I mean, there's no other way around it. I personally think a good example of that would be David Hogg. I think he is an empty individual who's looking to fill it with fame. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a couple minutes here. But, you know, the fact that there's a high percentage of suicides, that may be what we should be focusing on the most at this point in time, is the suicide rate, because those other numbers keep on going down. Okay, the overall statistic of crime in America has actually decreased, okay, over the last couple decades. We talked about this in the last podcast as well. I really encourage you to look it up. On the YouTube channel, we did the hot topic of the Second Amendment debate, and it went for over an hour discussion because we broke down everything from the Constitution to the Second Amendment right, what's an assault rifle, what is the AR-15, what are the typical excuses that are thrown out there in favor of gun control from the left, and what your responses should be, and what are the actual statistics that go into gun homicide rates and everything. And one of the things that really sticks out that I keep on bringing up to people is the fact that if you hear someone say that Australia banned guns and it worked, New Zealand banned guns and it worked, and Ireland banned guns and it worked and everything, you need to show them the statistics that, while yes, after the banning, the gun homicide rate did drop, at the same time, at an almost equal level of an angle for the graph, I don't know, I'm searching for the word here, but the overall homicide rate actually increased. And those are statistics that people often get confused, is the fact that gun homicide rates are obviously going to drop. If gun confiscation happens and people turn in their guns, if people show up at the door and take your guns from you, that's going to happen. But then you also have guns that were illegally obtained that they're sure as heck not turning in their guns, and they're not in any type of record, so those criminals get to keep their guns. So the overall homicide rate goes up, not because there's still guns in the hands of individuals who have seedy intentions. That's partially the reason for it, but also because they're finding other means to do it. An evil person is going to find a way to commit an evil act, which goes back to the whole argument that it's not the guns that are killing people, it's the people that are killing people, because of a societal mess that we've gotten ourselves into, where we have a sickness to us, that people feel like they can resolve things by killing other people needlessly or warrantlessly. But not only are they finding other means to kill these people in those countries where gun bans took effect, it's also the fact that those people are also now definitely defenseless, right? The wolves, as we talk about wolves and sheepdogs and everything in military terms, and that's often how they talk about things. So the military is sheepdogs over us sheep, and the wolves are the ones that are enemies out to get us in whatever capacity that is. The sheep are defenseless. They no longer are able to carry any type of weapon. And the wolves not only intend to do that harm anyway, but now are encouraged to do so because they know for a fact that they're defenseless. Sometimes someone may be deterred, as we learned in the Pulse nightclub shooting, which I totally forgot to bring up into this week's podcast, but it's very relevant. Sometimes people are deterred by armed individuals in going into a situation. If you didn't hear about the Pulse nightclub incident, what actually ended up happening 2 years later, we're now learning that it wasn't motivated by hatred towards homosexuals. Okay, it wasn't motive. It was definitely a terrorist attack. The intention was originally, by records now showing, to go into Disney World and open fire there. There's video captured of him putting a gun or a rifle or rifles into a baby carriage, covering it up and walking around Disney World, but seeing armed security people there, deciding to leave. Then records show that on his phone, he specifically Googled nightclubs in Florida, in the Orlando area, not gay nightclubs, but just clubs, and found two. I forget what the name of the other one was, but then the other one was Pulse. He went to the first nightclub, found that there were armed security guards there. He went to Pulse, found, I guess that there was an armed security guard there as well, but felt that the other nightclub may be easier. I'm sorry, no, it was opposite. He went to Pulse, found that it was unarmed, went back to the other nightclub, and then eventually turned around halfway between the clubs and actually went back to Pulse and opened fire there. So it's a very misconstrued situation that has been lied about for the last 2 years now, that it was all in regards to him open firing on homosexual individuals because of his perceived sin of that, and that it was not a terrorist attack. It's exactly what it was. It was a terrorist attack, and we know that now. I got a little off topic there. But this video, he's talking about the majority and how the majority of us who are law-abiding citizens are the ones that always end up getting screwed by the actions of the few who break the law. And it's not our fault, and we have to be the ones that pay the consequences. Certainly not the law breakers, just the law-abiding ones. A classic example of how that can backfire as an argument for the left is David Hogwash's sister is now complaining that they have to wear clear backpacks to school so that they can see if there's weapons hidden inside. So the action of one student led to this right being infringed of privacy, and she's complaining about it. She doesn't get the irony of it at all either. So one of the characters in this whole discussion is David Hogwash, or David Hogg as he's rightly called, I guess. Hogwash is what we like to call him. He recently decided to go toe-to-toe with Fox News personality Laura Ingraham after she slightly criticized him in a tweet. According to the New York Times, the dispute began Wednesday when Miss Ingraham shared an article about the student, David Hogwash, 17, getting rejected from colleges and accused him of whining about it. This is a rough tweet, so hold on. You may have to cover your children's ears. Her tweet read, "David Hogg rejected by 4 colleges to which he applied and whines about it. Dinged by UCLA with a 4.1 GPA, totally predictable given acceptance rates." And then it linked to an article that specifically breaks down the criteria that's often used for UCLA. So it's actually based in fact, which means that the only thing that could be considered offensive at all is when she used the word whines. Bad choice of wording? Maybe, possibly even. But enough to send Hogwash into a complete snowflake meltdown and using his current spotlight to go after her advertisers? Certainly not. In response, Mr. Hogg, who has rapidly become a prominent advocate for gun control policies, called on Miss Ingraham's advertisers to boycott her show. 8 of the companies, TripAdvisor, Wayfair, Hulu, Nutrish, Johnson & Johnson, Nestle, Atlantis Paradise Island, and Stitch Fix, said they were removing their ads. A 9th, Expedia, said it had recently pulled its advertising, but declined to say when. As news of the boycotts began coming out on Thursday, Miss Ingraham apologized. saying, "On reflection, in the spirit of Holy Week, I apologize for any upset or hurt my tweet caused him or any of the brave victims of Parkland," she said, while also extending an invitation for Mr. Hogg to appear on her show. An apology. So going back to what happened with Lance and Greg in our past story, where Lance was bullied by Greg and Greg apologized for the negative attention brought to the district and not apologizing to the one that he bullied, Ingram here is actually apologizing to Hogwash. So he probably accepted it, right? Mr. Hogg said he was unimpressed by the apology. "She only apologized after we went after her advertisers. It kind of speaks for itself." So it wasn't good enough for him, right? And we're going to find out a couple more things that weren't good enough for him either in regards to actions being taken, which just goes to show that the agenda is greater than the truth, or in this case, the agenda is more important than progress actually getting done. David Hogwash is not interested in the national discussion. He's not interested in working with other people. He's interested in the fame itself and promoting an agenda that has to be accepted at 110% rate. Otherwise, it's not going to be good enough for him. So there is no compromise. There is no working with him or the people that support him. He wants it done his way. It's his way or the highway. Wayfair, an e-commerce company, said in a statement that it supports open dialogue and debate on issues, but that it would stop advertising on Miss Ingram's show. The decision of an adult to personally criticize a high school student who has lost his classmates in an unspeakable tragedy is not consistent with our values, the company said. I think I get to this later on, but I'm just going to address it right now. For them to say that an adult is criticizing a high school student who lost the classmates in a tragedy is not consistent with their values. I'm sorry, but David Hogwash has put himself into the spotlight, the public spotlight, become a leader of a movement now, and did it with full intention of seeking a spotlight, okay? He's not like trying to run this from his computer as like a blogger at home trying to start a revolution. He is soaking in every instance of being shown in the media, like I was soaking up the sun rays of Hawaii. Okay, he is bathing in this attention right now. He has no intention of giving that up. He has no intention of being this pretty little boy who was shielded by everything. Until it comes to a time when he actually is criticized for things and then he runs behind that shield. But we're going to talk about that in a second, too. Let me just check this real quick here. Tell him the truth, Linda says. Thank you, Linda. Okay. So Mr. Hogg plans to study either journalism or political science, he said. He can... Oh, geez. Could you imagine getting Hogwash as a senator somewhere? Science... Or, no, I'm sorry. It was political science. So journalism... This kid cannot enter journalism. Wait till you hear some of the stuff that he has actually said in interviews. He confirmed that he had been rejected from 4 schools: the University of California, Los Angeles, University of California, San Diego, and University of California, Santa Barbara, and the University of California, Irvine. So he's getting rejected from these schools. He has a 4.1 GPA. I'm not, first of all, congratulations to him. If he's able to achieve that, I don't know. I personally have a problem with the standards in public schools today. But when I was in school, I was considered among the class clowns. Didn't care at the time. I wish I could do it all over again and everything, and I would put more behind it and everything. Although I am very happy where I ended up job-wise right now. But I did not have anywhere near a 4.1. I'll just put it that way, okay? I could have done a heck of a lot better. So good for him for having a 4.1 GPA. I'm not bemoaning that at all. But maybe the reason why he's getting rejected isn't merely because of his grades or even his political stances. I don't think it has anything to do with him being in the media right now. Maybe it's the fact that they see a little snot that believes he knows more than adults and is unwilling to listen and learn, but instead feels he should be the one that's heard in every single situation. I wouldn't want to attempt to teach a little obnoxious kid like that either. Why would you want to be in the room with that? That is just going to be that student that raises his hand all the time to object to the teacher, no matter what they're saying, just to have a counterpoint. He's one of those people that just has to have his voice heard, that counterpoint heard, and to call out people. That is a disruptor in the classroom, in any setting where you can't even get your work done as a teacher. Ben Shapiro, on the other hand, fought back against Hogwash's lack of acceptance of Ingram's apology in a series of tweets that read, "I look forward to Hogg's apologies to Republicans," which he said were sick effers. Dana Lash, who he said was hypocritical and disgusting for criticizing Broward Sheriff Scott Israel, and Marco Rubio, who he said was bribed by the NRA to give away children's lives. You may not like what Ingram said. You may disagree with it. I did. But it isn't remotely close to the level of viciousness with which Hogg has attacked people who disagree with him. I was Hogg's age when I started writing a syndicated column. I got hammered repeatedly, and some of it was justified. When you join the public discourse, you take on slings and arrows. That's even more true if you decide to maliciously align your opponents, as Hogg has. So again, this kid is feeling like he should be shielded from attacks because he is criticizing people that are attacking him, but he's a kid, so you can't attack him. Which is great, because in that same article that was written about Shapiro's response, John Porter, who wrote the article, also said, I'm sorry, this was coming from Louder with Crowder, though. He's a reporter for them. He points out that Hogg can't have it both ways. He can't throw stones, then act all hurty when someone lobs one back at him. So Hogg hits and hits, then hides behind, "You can't criticize us children." Laura, on the other hand, took the higher road and apologized. He didn't accept like a little elementary school kid when she could have easily have stooped to his level and said, "You can't attack me. I'm a woman and you are projecting your white male privilege." She could have easily have gone down to his level and done that. She could do that with any argument to lower herself to these types of people's argument levels. But she didn't. Obviously, she apologized. He refused to accept it, which says more about him than it says about her, especially since the only word that she used was whines. Okay, if you're going to melt down over that word, maybe you're not prepared for college anyway, despite your grades. CNN's Allison Camerata called out far-left activist David Hogg for once for his vicious attacks on Marco Rubio, suggesting that Hogg's vile rhetoric was going too far and was not constructive in helping provide solutions to problems. Hogg declared that Hogg, was not going nearly far enough in his attack. So let's take a look at his response to that.
You know, I want to talk to you about Senator Marco Rubio because my eyes were opened when I was there. You guys have sort of targeted him as somebody who you don't think is doing enough and who you sort of depict as being callous. But, you know, I had a chance to talk to Scott Beagle's mom. He, of course, is your geography teacher who was killed in the massacre. And she said that Marco Rubio behind the scenes has reached out to her, had all sorts of conversations with her, talked about how what they've done so far on Capitol Hill in terms of the Fix NICS Act, in terms of the Stop School Violence Act that's part of the omnibus. Yes, these are low-hanging fruit. Yes, you want more. But should you be giving credit for even these incremental steps, David?
I think it's important to realize that it's good that we're having these incremental steps, but just like we saw in Florida, where we rose the age to 21, you can still purchase a gun at the age of 18 if it's a private sale. And like with many of the laws that they're passing right now, where they tried kind of fixing the Dickey Amendment, they didn't give any more funding. What they did is they said, like, you officially can do research, but we just aren't going to fund it. And they're leaving a lot of loopholes in here and trying to seem like they are doing things, when in reality, these laws have more holes than Swiss cheese.
I understand, but I guess my point is that if you're trying to get everybody together, if you're trying to have solutions, do you think it is helpful when you say things like, Marco Rubio is putting, for $1.05 or whatever your coupon said, that's how much he values students? I mean, do you think that's unnecessarily provocative?
No, I think it's not enough I don't think it's even provocative enough, because Marco Rubio is still supported by the NRA, which works to ensure not the safety of gun owners and the safety of Americans everywhere, but to ensure that they sell more guns. And at the end of the day, so long as he is being paid by the NRA, he's not going to work to fix anything that is going to be concrete change. He's going to make laws that get him reelected, but actually don't have any major effect.
Whoa, 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 whoa. We got some problems in that statement here. Well, first of all, while Hogwash can't accept any progress from Rubio because obviously nothing is enough unless you are doing exactly as Hogwash says, as I mentioned before, he also goes on to spread a false narrative based in ignorance. His reasoning is that continued support from the NRA is unacceptable because the NRA is just trying to sell more guns. The NRA does not sell guns, okay? And if he is talking about helping gun dealerships to sell more guns, they don't get a kickback for that either. They are simply there to support and protect the constitutional right of the Second Amendment. That is their purpose. That is where they advocate their sources to. But that isn't the first and probably won't be the last time that David Hogwash has outright lied about things in regards to this movement. In a stunning display of just what an arrogant little prick this guy is, we also have this video to show you as well.
Well, at this point, it's like when your old ass parents like, I don't know how to send an iMessage, and you're just like, give me the f***ing phone, and you take it and you're like, okay, let me handle it, and you get it done in 1 second. Sadly, that's what we have to do with our government because our parents don't know how to use a f***ing democracy, so we have to. We think what sick f***ers are out there that want to continue to sell more guns, murder more children, and honestly just get reelected. What type of person are you when you want to see more f***ing money than children's lives? What type of shitty person does that?
Yeah, David, swear your storm up, man, because that gets your point across better. Your curse words, you're so great, man. This is so immature for this kid to be the leader of this movement. This is who they have chosen, who, to get his points across, has to resort to foul language to get his point across. And you see this across the media all the time. Not cable media and everything, but people like Bill Maher have to curse. Unfortunately, some comedians out there have to curse to get their point across. And I was going to give examples, but there's comedians that curse all the time that used to have Comedy Central specials where they're not allowed to curse, obviously, that could get through the whole thing and made people fall in love with them in the first place without ever having to curse. So it just doesn't make sense anymore, you know? And it just shows a lack of respect for people. To me, personally, it shows that David Hogwash is a little jerk. Okay, someone that society shouldn't have to deal with in person and have to hear from. It tells me a lot about his parents and the values that they raised him with. It tells me that maybe his parents need to take a better look at their lifestyle choices as well and how they interact with people, because someone somewhere along the lines had become an example to this kid to feel like he could just go on camera and say these kinds of things the way he's saying it. But beyond that, obviously, okay, you're a teenager, you feel like cursing is your way of getting points across, so be it, okay? Your followers are immature like you as well, so it doesn't really matter. Here's the point, though. David, this is not a democracy, okay? And it certainly isn't a democracy either at that point, if that helps to get the point across to you a little bit better. A little research can go a long way when you take up the mantle of leadership for a movement. Maybe you should start taking the time to research your movement that you're being a leader of while you're not going to school, because you're not going to go to school, obviously, until things change in your favor. And by your favor, obviously, we mean 110, 120%. While you're not in school, in between being pimped out by the media like CNN and putting you on every 2 hours for your uneducated, immature opinion on the matter, maybe you should be Googling some things and looking into it. For one, I know that kids like you probably don't really like saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, but at one point in time it says, "To the Republic for which it stands." That's kind of a dead giveaway. Maybe your school in Florida or wherever, and you're one of those people that has to kneel down or whatever the heck you do, okay? Maybe you're one of those new Tide Pod eating, condom snorting people, but the fact remains, it's a republic, not a democracy. So that's lie number 2 that you're trying, or a false narrative at least, that you're trying to spread in the meantime. Let's go on though. How about when he first attacked Dana Lash? They originally referred to her as the CEO or president of the NRA. She is just recently become the spokeswoman for the NRA. All right, she is not in any big leadership type position. She got her own show, thank God, because it gives her an opportunity to hit back at these types of individuals. It's just ridiculous. False narrative number 3 right there for you. Let's go back to CNN for a moment, though, and Alison Camerata's interview for possibly one of the most cringeworthy interview segments of bias in a long time. And obviously over the last 2 years, we've seen some crazy bias in the news. But while we may applaud Alison Camerata for her challenging hogwash, I can't forget that, for her challenging hogwash on his narrative against Marco Rubio, we can applaud that. Okay, it's nice to see someone at CNN stand up once in a while and actually be a journalist and not just supporting a narrative. Then you run into this one.
David, I am stunned that 4 colleges rejected you. What kind of dumbass colleges don't want you? I mean, you've taken the country by storm. How do you explain this? Did they reject you before the Parkland massacre, or how do you explain this?
They rejected me about 2 weeks ago, most of them. It was UCLA and UCSD. The way I explain it is we have a heavily impacted university system in America, and I think there's a lot of really good candidates that don't get into college, and I think it goes to show that regardless of whether or not you get into college, you can still change the world. The hardest part is just believing that you can and continuing that effort to change the world, because you eventually will.
Heal the world, make it a better place. Gotta be a David Hogwash. Okay. So Alison Camerata is obviously being a little overboard on brown-nosing the situation with David Hogwash. What kind of college wouldn't accept you? You're such an exceptional human being. My word, what is going on in the world? As Mike would say, cats and dogs living together. Where do I put my hands? Watch where you put your hands, Allison, because it's you may get hit with a not Me Too movement type situation there. So that's kind of disgusting journalism as far as I'm concerned. What she did there, and then for him to go off about, oh, you can make a change, man. Need to mature a little bit. As I said in the last podcast, we talked about his fellow student, which we're actually going to talk about very shortly here too, Cameron Kasky, who's probably the second most popular activist of the Parkland students, who went on Bill Maher with David Hogwash and said, how dare you criticize us students? We are the experts because we had AR-15s pointed at us, and you don't know the situation, and you can't have an opinion on the situation unless you've been there and you've been a part of that. So now he's Cameron, how dare you, Kasky, in my mind. But in regards to that, I said, that's just like me as a cancer survivor going into the hospital and saying to the doctors, I see what you're doing there, removing that tumor. Can I suggest something different? As a matter of fact, no, I'm not asking to have you do something differently. I'm demanding something be done differently because I've had cancer. So I'm an expert, obviously. I've been through it. You're a doctor for cancer. You've never had it, so you're not an expert like me. So if you could just cut this way instead, that might be better. I mean, it's so ridiculous to think that you're an expert just because you've been through a certain situation. But again, I will give a semi-benefit of the doubt that we have all been that age at some point in time and felt that we were running the world and that we knew everything. And then you get like 5 years down the road, you get through college, maybe even in college you have a realization. Most times you don't. And you get out of college, the real world hits you in the face with everything that is reality, as we like to say. And you realize you didn't know squat. You didn't know much at all. So, maybe we need to wait for that maturity there for him to come to that maturity, but it is what it is. And Alison Camerata, it's so sad that we had to praise you in one and knock you down in another one. So is it professional journalism? Certainly not. Before we leave David Hogwash for the other student activists, for a while there, it upset me too. People were claiming that Hoggy was a crisis actor because he turned up in a news story on the West Coast. This is now proven true the news story, not him being a crisis actor, by this news story. So let's take a look at this and get some thoughts on it after that. Okay.
David Hogg says his 17-year-old friend put his boogie board on this beach trash can. And when a lifeguard asked him to move it, he did. But then the situation took a turn.
He said, I didn't know it was a crime to put your board on the trash can, because he just didn't want it to get sandy.
That's when David says the lifeguard approached and he started recording.
We clear?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I'm not your parents.
No, you're not, so why don't you off?
I don't know you.
I don't
You've
either.
never been down here, so don't think you're going to come down here and lip me.
David posted the video on YouTube and in just a couple of days has gone viral.
We felt threatened. We felt we're just worried, and he seemed unpredictable.
Oh, that unpredictable authority figure on the beach. That's not apparent for these individuals. So it seems like David was out there on vacation. Crisis actor. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that that's a negative. But what I will say is that this shines a big light on David Hogwash and the company that he keeps, the two of those. This kid is obviously seeking attention and fame and has a history of showing a lack of respect and demeanor. Again, where are his parents in this situation? How did he show up in this news story and his parents see this and them not say to him, guys, whether the lifeguard was right or wrong, he is the authority figure on that beach. He's there to save lives and keep things under control. You have to kind of respect that. We just got done having our kids being watched by a family friend and everything, and we said they are in control of that situation. You have to listen to them while we're gone because we are giving them the authority. That is essentially what we're doing to lifeguards. Otherwise, lifeguards would be held accountable for deaths if they just sat up on the post and watched people drown and said, I don't really have to. I mean, whatever. But this kid and the company that he keeps shows a complete lack of respect and demeanor towards other people. It's obviously been learned from role models in his family or even the school district. I'm not sure. I'm going to guess it's the family because there's some people like Kyle Kushev who is coming out of the school district who actually have constructive things to say without having to resort to demeaning people, making up stories, false narratives, lies, and cursing to get their point across. So I'm gonna stretch it to the fact that it's probably something to do with a bad family unit. But David Hogwash is, like I said, far from the only student from the school that's leading this movement that is not only spreading lies, but also showing their true colors. Cameron, how dare you, Kasky, recently tweeted, "The First Amendment has restrictions. The Second Amendment has no restrictions." These weapons are not in the hands of well-regulated militias. The changes that people are demanding do not desecrate the Second Amendment. They just make it a safe addition to our Constitution. Two things here. Number one, they can say all they want that they are not out to take the guns from people, okay, all guns, but you go there, you can look up multiple on the street interviews of people at the March for Our Lives rallies and people being interviewed, and there are plenty of people in the movement that are saying, yeah, it's time to take all the guns. I've posted a picture of a guy with a sign that says, okay, I will pry it from your cold dead hands, in reference to Charlton Heston speaking in front of the NRA years ago. There's people that are saying, yeah, we want to come for the guns because they have no place in society, no place at all. Even when you give them examples, what if I'm cornered in my house? The intruder has a gun. Should I not be able to shoot them? No, you should not be able to shoot them because we've seen stories like this where the intruder becomes the victim. They got shot. Oh my gosh, and they're still alive. The one mother whose son was shot dead because he went into the house and tried to attack the man. She's like, oh, he was just a child. What was going on? I mean, he had his whole life to live. Yes. Even the guy that was older, the victim was older, he still had life to live too. It was going to be one or the other. Thankfully, it was the person breaking the law that was shot dead. And I think he should have done it again and again. But that being said, Once again, this is complete ignorance is on full display by Kasky, showcasing his lack of research, which happens to be what's going on with David Hogwash as well. Here are just some of the restrictions on the Second Amendment that already exist that he can look into in the meantime. So write this down. Like I said, between your being pimped by CNN and Bill Maher and everything, you can actually take a look at this. MSNBC pimps him out too. Google some of this stuff. The National Firearms Act, the Arms Export Control Act of 1976, the Gun Control Act of 1968, the Firearm Owners Protection Act, and the Brady Law, just to name a few, not to mention the fact that you have to be 18 to buy a rifle, 21 to purchase a sidearm, and multiple other things. You have to go through background checks and everything. It is a restricted amendment. So either you know that, either you don't know that and you're ignorant, okay, which you guys are kind of showing a lot here, or you do know that and you are being blissfully arrogant on the situation and trying to spread a false narrative, which seems to be the case most of the time with you guys down there. Perhaps even worse, and this is going to tie up a lot of our stories tonight, is Emma Gonzalez and her recent remarks at a rally. While these students are protesting the Second Amendment and trying to do everything they can to place sole blame on the guns themselves, Emma admitted that she and others were basically the ones who bullied the shooter. So let's take a look at what she had to say.
Since he was in middle school, it was no surprise to anyone who knew him to hear that he was the shooter. Those talking about how we should have not ostracized him, you didn't know this kid! Okay, we did!
Okay, so he's a weird kid. All right, obviously a lot of these shooters, like the theater shooter during the Batman, not Batman Begins, the other one, Dark Knight, okay, with Heath Ledger as a Joker. This kid went in dressed up as a Joker, I think, and shot up the movie theater. Like a lot of these, 9 out of 11 of the last mass shooters have had psychological disorders. I think it was 9 or 10 of them also didn't grow up with a father figure in the home. These are kind of statistics that no one really wants to talk about in these rallies and everything. But in regards to this, yeah, the kid was weird, but that gives you the ability and permission to then ostracize and go after him and bully him. You're no better than Lance when he was a kid, okay? Did this lead directly to the shooter, who we don't name, going into the Parkland school and shooting it up? Maybe. I would certainly say it has something to do with it. So while they're trying to blame the guns, we're not looking at the real issue of the shooter themselves, which I gotta say, Gonzalez there, Emma, you may be one of the main sources of why this kid went off the handle and actually committed this crime. So you're partially to blame, in my mind, a hell of a lot more than the gun that was used. Okay. I also said we haven't had a national movement against bullying for some time now, and here she is saying that people didn't know him like they did and they were allowed to ostracize him. Not that that could have had anything to do with him being driven to shoot up the school, obviously. According to CNN, all the nonsense dribble coming from the Parkland Five may be leading to something they are probably not too happy about. Donations to the NRA have tripled after the Parkland shooting. In January, the NRA collected almost $248,000 in individual contributions. In February, they collected more than $779,000. The Nonpartisan Center for Responsive Politics, which tracks political spending, tracked itemized contributions, donations of $200 or more by an individual, in the days before and after the shooting. According to their data, in the 2 weeks after the shooting, itemized contributions to the NRA doubled from the previous 2 weeks. They also found the number of people contributing in the 7 days after the shooting increased almost 500% from the week before. The Center for Responsive Politics says it's unclear what caused the spike, whether it was NRA outreach or President Trump's comments after the shooting suggesting he might support tougher regulations on guns. Personally, I would like to thank Hogwash, Kasky, and Gonzalez because I think their insane rhetoric and push for government overreach is exactly what led to this. By the way, March donations, I don't know by the numbers where they were, but you could add our contributions in there. I'd been talking and thinking about joining the NRA for years, but not being a hunter, I didn't. And after listening to these idiots go after the NRA and spread false narratives and everything, yeah, we need people supporting and defending our Second Amendment with a louder voice of contributions from all the people that support that to go up against these ridiculous narratives. So, proud member. In what I consider even funnier news, the 15-year-old son of InfoWars Alex Jones challenged Parkland survivor activist David Hogg to a debate over guns. The site posted a video featuring Rex Jones, who is seen in his father's seat during a monologue, blasting Hogg for his part in the public campaign pushing for stricter gun laws in the United States. He said, "Hogg, you claim that the establishment is shaking in its boots in fear of you. No, they love you. They love gun control. They've wanted this for years." The InfoWars video is interspersed with clips of Democratic politicians speaking of the need to enact laws against assault weapons. It is admitted that they want to disarm the American people just as they have done with so many corrupt regimes in the past, Rex Jones said. Rex Jones blasted Hogg as a child human shield by the mainstream media so that you can go out and make outrageous statements without anyone being allowed to rebuke you. That's 3 of us saying that now. So am I the only one that finds this incredibly funny and sad at the same time? We have gotten to the point that Hogwash has become a ringleader of a circus act, and then we add a Jones clown into the mix. This could seriously be the pay-per-view of our lifetime if Hogwash agrees. Can you imagine what that would be like? Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's main event. In this corner, we have a self-entitled, disrespectful little snot who is being pimped by the media, especially CNN, at least 3 times a day, who feels his opinion on gun control is adult enough to sway political policy and yet when challenged falls behind his shield of he's just a child and shouldn't be criticized. He's been indoctrinated for 2/3 of his life already, doesn't understand the Constitution and basic human rights. You may have seen him using the First Amendment to blast the Second Amendment while also pushing a strong anti-Fourth Amendment to actually seize our property, all while spouting that the Constitution is outdated. He steps away from a #MeToo movement with Allison Camerata. It's David Hogwash! And in this corner, straight out of nowhere, literally no one's heard of this kid except for the legal custody battles of his parents over the past couple years, we have the son of a radio host whose main topics are chemtrails, fluoride turning frogs gay, school shooting survivors being crisis actors, Sandy Hook being a staged event, someone who rips off his shirt to push a supplement brand of his own, and notably, recently, someone who interviewed a professional who knows that NASA is abducting children, sending them off in spaceships to Mars and holding them as hostage as slaves to working colonies that our satellites can't see. You can't make this stuff up any more than they already have, folks. It's Rex Jones! I've been waiting to do that. That was fun. Before we end the topic for the night, I think it's worth noting that articles are currently coming out about London crime where guns have been banned. Several sources are headlining that knife attacks are propelling London to outpace New York City's murder rate for the first time in modern history. In February, the UK capital outpaced New York City's murder rate for the first time in modern history as London experienced a surge in knife attacks. Both cities have roughly the same population, and in the month of February, 15 people were murdered in London, whereas New York City recorded 14 homicide deaths, reports the London Times. London is set to outpace New York City's murder rate for March as well. By late last night, there have been 22 killings in the capital, according to the Metropolitan Police, against 21 in the U.S. city, notes the Times. 8 of those murdered in March happened in a span of just 7 days. Since 2014, excluding victims of terrorism, the number of London murders has risen by a stunning 38%. London has also seen an epidemic of acid attacks in recent years. Acid attacks happen to be a calling card of Islamic extremists, in case you didn't know. And they have that problem over there as well. You can also research into no-go zones in London, which Germany has finally admitted through Chancellor Merkel that is a problem, and she finally had to admit to it because of the crime statistics. The Fight for Peace charity head in the capital, Jacob Whittingham, what an English name, proper, is perplexed by the random violence. What's scary about London is the randomness of the crime, he said. With young people in London, you have no idea if and when you may be the victim of a violent crime. That's why they feel the need to carry weapons. Let me repeat that. That's why they feel the need to carry weapons. This is in London. Metropolitan Police Commissioner Cressida Dick blames social media. Dick said websites and mobile phone applications such as YouTube, Snapchat, and Instagram were partially to blame for the bloodshed, reports the Evening Standard. Fatal stabbings in England and Wales are now at their highest levels since 2011, rising by 12% in the year ending 2017. Okay, so what do we have here? Now that guns aren't able to be used, they have resorted to a different weapon. Knives. And if we go ahead and do a knife confiscation, what are we going to be cutting our steaks with? Spoons? Maybe sporks. Sporks would probably work a little bit better, but those rigid edges on sporks, that's kind of dangerous too. You could poke an eye out with one of those things. Evil finds a way. There is good and there is evil in the world, and evil will always find a way to hurt other people. Doing this kind of stuff, you've just disarmed good people, law-abiding people, as our citizen hero said earlier in the video in that council meeting. And you have turned sheep even more defenseless, so you've basically cut off their legs and not even allow them to run anywhere at this point. But listen, it's all stuff that's coming together. I think that this second